How bad was Jimmer Fredette actually? After having a ton of promise early on, Jimmer Fredette's career certainly did not go as planned in the end. It seemed like Jimmer Fredette either went in one of two directions. It was either he was playing extremely good or he was playing extremely poorly. There was no in between for him. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Jimmer Fredette was drafted with the number 10 overall selection in the 2011 NBA draft by the Sacramento Kings. And originally when Jimmer was getting drafted, he was seen as a young player with a ton of potential. He was seen as a guy who had a great ability to hit that three-point jump shot by creating for himself, but also spreading the court out effectively. He was also seen as a guy who didn't have the best passing and playmaking abilities, but he had it at some level. But the main reason for why there was so much hype and excitement around his name was certainly due to his great diverse scoring ability. And originally when he played in his rookie season, he averaged 7.6 points per game on 38% shooting from the field, 1.2 rebounds on 1.8 assists. Now certainly after his rookie season, it was somewhat disappointing to see those numbers, especially considering how much hype and excitement was around his name going into the NBA, but I will say he was showing some flashes, I guess I would say, but he also wasn't getting the biggest opportunity in his rookie season. So the consensus at that point was as the years did progress, Jimmer would just continuously get better and better as he got more and more confidence and as he had more and more time to work on his individual skills. But unfortunately, as the years progressed, that turned out to be the best season of his career. In his second season, his numbers dipped to around 7.2 points per game on 42% shooting from the field, 1 rebound on 1.3 assists. The season following that, it dropped once again, and at that point, the Sacramento Kings decided it was time to move on from Jimmer Fredette after only 2.5 seasons. So Jimmer then went to the Chicago Bulls during that same 2013 season, but only played for 8 games and didn't provide all that much whatsoever. Then the season following that, he spent basically 75% of his season with the New Orleans Pelicans, then he was with the Knicks for 2 games, then he was with the Phoenix Suns for 6 games in 2018, and that was the last time we saw Jimmer Fredette in the NBA. So after the sample size that we did see Jimmer in the NBA, I think it's pretty apparent that he just never lived up to expectations. He just didn't look like the same player that he did in college whatsoever. Now one thing I will say is when Jimmer was playing over in China, he was looking insane. He was putting up 40-point games consistently, he was putting up incredible shooting numbers as well, pulling up from basically half court. He looked like an absolute beast in China, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't translating whatsoever to the NBA. But the question is why? Why was Jimmer never able to live up to expectations in the NBA? Well, in my opinion, I think it comes down to a couple different factors. The first and main factor is confidence. I think in college, after Jimmer started to play really well early on, he gained all the confidence in the world. And when you have a ton of confidence, you're most likely going to play better than your skills would suggest. And I think that's exactly what happened. I think he played extremely well in college, but I don't necessarily think his skills backed up the level of play that he was showing. He was just playing on an incredible level. But then once he got into the NBA and he started to go up against much tougher competition, I think he started to play poorly early on and then started to lose confidence. And after he started to lose that confidence, he began to play worse and worse, and it just never recovered from there. Because as I touched upon before, confidence is everything. So when you have a ton of confidence, you're probably going to play a little bit better than your talent would suggest. But if you lose confidence completely, you could be playing significantly worse than your talent would suggest. And I do think when you look at the individual skills that Jimmer had, he should have been a better player than he was showing in the NBA. But I do think a huge reason for why he was never able to even be a decent player in the league was due to that lack of confidence. Now the next factor that I want to touch upon is his actual skills. Now in college, Jimmer had the ability to dribble the ball up the court and just pull up from wherever he wanted. But in the NBA, that was much more difficult to do. A, you have pressure from your coaches not to take those kind of shots and play more in the rhythm of the offense. But also if you hit one shot from out there, or even if you don't hit a shot, if NBA defenses know that you're a really good shooter from out there, they're going to guard you a lot more tightly. So it just gave him less room to take those kind of shots. And those same kind of shots that he was taking in the NBA were just much more contested and much more difficult shots as a whole. And in college, Jimmer had a pretty nice ability to drive all the way to the basket and finish around players with either hand, either his left or right hand, but in the NBA that became much more difficult, and he wasn't nearly as effective as he was in college. So for example, if there was a particular game where Jimmer wasn't shooting all that well, he didn't have that ability to drive all the way to the basket and finish around players with crafty layups to really fall back on. So if he wasn't shooting well, he probably wasn't going to play well that game as a whole. He didn't have a fallback option. So I certainly think that's another huge reason for why Jimmer never truly lived up to expectations. Now the last reason that I want to touch upon is opportunity and the teams that he played for. Now I mentioned that he was drafted by the Sacramento Kings, and even though the Kings are run a little bit better now, they're still known for being a very poor organization. But especially during that time around 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, those years the Kings were extraordinarily bad. They were making horrific trades, they were making horrific draft picks, as Jimmer actually was one of those poor picks. They were making poor decisions in their head coaching searches, they were making poor decisions on who to hire as a whole, and overall that toxic organization just did not help Jimmer whatsoever. Because that kind of situation would make it difficult for really anybody to play well. But especially when you talk about a young guy who had a ton of expectations on his shoulders, but also was in his rookie season, you can just imagine how difficult it would have been for him to play really well right away. And the fact that he didn't play really well right away just put that much more pressure on his shoulders, and the fact that his organization in the Sacramento Kings wasn't really helping him out all that much, it just made it that much more difficult, and you can see how that could spiral in the wrong direction. But now the question is, do I think Jimmer could ever make it back to the NBA at some point? Well, at this point I think it's basically a 0% chance. Maybe we give him a 1 or 2% chance at making it back to the NBA. Now the reason why I think this is Jimmer has gotten a bunch of opportunities in the past to make it back to the NBA, but it just seemed like every time he got an opportunity, he just never played all that well. And not only was he not living up to expectations that he had on draft night, but honestly he wasn't even a decent player. So due to those reasons, I don't think it's very likely that Jimmer makes it back to the NBA, but I guess at the end of the day, there's always a chance. At this point, Jimmer is having a ton of success playing over in China, and now more recently playing in a basketball tournament in Paris. So it seems like he's having a lot of fun with that, and it seems like he's having a ton of success with that. So I think that's probably something that he wants to focus on more and just stay over there, make the money that he can make, and just have a really good rest of his basketball career. At the end of the day, it is sad to see that Jimmer never made it in the NBA, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult to make it in the NBA and be very, very good in the NBA. So it is at the very least nice to see that Jimmer was able to have a pretty nice career for himself over in China and now more recently in Paris. But I also did want to mention, I did think Jimmer's style was extremely entertaining to watch. Just to see a guy that can pull up from basically 40 feet almost was just incredible to see night in and night out in college, and he certainly had a legendary college career. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening with Jimmer Fredette. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think Jimmer Fredette has a chance to make it back to the NBA, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these two videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.